Okay, it's a day after Christmas, 2024. I'm outside of this Desi restaurant, Pakistani restaurant in Houston called Aga's. There's a Pakistani restaurant in London my wife and I have been to a few times called Tayyab's, that we say this have the best lamb chops in the world are from that restaurant. My wife tells me that this Pakistani restaurant in Houston is best Desi khana she's had outside Pakistan. Anyway, let's give it a shot. Oh, and this is the video lecture that I'm doing about music industry, current state of affairs, current stuff in the music industry for JMS 200. Anyway, and then maybe some, interstitial stuff about lamb chops. I'm going to start with this because I know this is the kind of stuff that students like. Um, these are some statistics from RIAA, that's Recording Industry Association of America. Name sounds for some, the acronym stands for something like that. Okay. This is reports from the middle of 2024. They have not yet released their end of the year 2024 report. So this is the statistics current as of the middle of 2024. I'm recording this at the beginning of 2025. So this is the most recent data that we have. Okay. What this shows is that the music industry revenues are growing, and that's 8.7 billion. That is 8.7 billion. It is growing. And when you compare the midpoint of 2024 with the midpoint of 2023 and 2022, it is growing. So the music industry is growing. And most of the money, or in fact, the vast majority of the money is coming from streaming services. 84% of the revenue comes from streaming. 11% is coming from physical sales, meaning CDs or vinyl albums. It's kind of remarkable that that's even 11%, but most of the money is coming from streaming. Sync refers to music licensing. When you use a song in a movie or TV show, that is another source of revenue. But over 80% is coming from streaming. Okay, so in comparison to streaming, physical sales are only 11% of the total, but within that 11%, vinyl has actually overtaken CDs. I think that's kind of interesting. I think that's very interesting. The units you see here are displayed in increments of millions. So that's 16.8 million CDs sold halfway through 2024, but 24.3 million albums, either LPs or EPs, sold in that time frame. So streaming is number one. The bulk of the money for the music industry comes from streaming, but when you look at the physical product, vinyl has actually overtaken CD. I think that's pretty interesting. And the way these streaming services work, I assume y'all know this. Maybe there's some musicians in the class. Every time a song is played, the artist or maybe the music publisher, depending upon the rights, gets paid a certain amount of money. It's not even a penny. It's a fraction of a penny. And you can see that these fractions, or did I suppose a fraction? Yeah, I guess it is semantics. It's very low. That's the point. It's very low, very, very low. Okay. So if, this graphic might not be totally current, might be a little outdated, but the general gist is correct. So if you're going to have your song played on Spotify, you got to be someone like Taylor Swift or Beyonce or Morgan Wallen or Bad Bunny. You got to be someone of this caliber before you're ever going to see any real money. You're not going to be able to retire, if you're an up and coming aspiring artist and you get a few thousand streams on Spotify, you're just not going to make any money. So yes, artists and publishers do get paid when their songs are played on the streaming services, but it's really, really little. Here's some news about Spotify. I think that Spotify is probably a platform many people in the class are using. Some people who work at Spotify have sort of become whistleblowers and acknowledge that Spotify is using artificial intelligence to create some royalty-free songs, just artificially generated using AI songs. So maybe you're listening to a playlist in the background. I think they're only doing this with stuff that's like kind of playing in the background, like easy listening or soft jazz or maybe classical music, not something that you would be listening to intently focused on. But say you're playing this easy listening soft jazz in the background, every fourth song is just some ghost song that has been created by Spotify that they don't pay the artist very much, but they're paying zero for this stuff. Zero. That's a little troubling, a little concerning. This musician in North Carolina, kind of maybe a clever guy, but you can go to jail for being too clever. He creates some sort of program using bots or whatever on these computers to just artificially boost his own streaming numbers. Probably releases a few songs, realizes he's not getting paid, so he comes up with some scheme to try and circumvent Spotify's algorithm and boost his own numbers by just reloading and restreaming the song over and over and over again. The Department of Justice has actually charged this guy with fraud. It's the first case of the nature. First case like this. Yeah, the guy could go to jail. The guy could go to jail for artificially boosting his streaming numbers. And this relates to this story that's ongoing right now. Drake and Kendrick Lamar had a rap battle, a beef. I think that's what the kids say. They had a beef. Drake is saying that Spotify, and I think it was Universal Music, were artificially boosting the numbers for Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us, which contains the allegation, I don't want to get in trouble for defamation here, allegation that Drake is a pedophile. And so Drake is saying that the song really wasn't that popular. It really wasn't a mega hit. It really wasn't a viral hit. It was artificially boosted to be that way. Spotify's denying that. Spotify said no, they didn't do that. They didn't do that at all. But this relates to something called click fraud, which we will discuss in a later lecture about advertising. But sometimes you think that maybe tracking things online would be easier because everything leaves a digital footprint. But because of the amount of data that is created and the way computers work, it's very hard and confusing to figure out what's real and what's not real. And if something is streamed many, many times, maybe that's not real. Maybe that was artificially boosted. Okay, now I have a music report, a couple of slides here. This company called Luminate tracks different types of media industries. They released this data. Again, this is current as of halfway through 2024, Now, when we look at top share, now we're looking just at the US, just in the US market, music sales and streaming. So we're looking at streaming numbers and sales by genre. Number one genre is R&B/hip hop. Okay. When it comes to radio formats, country is a more popular format. When you look at the total number of radio stations across the United States that have country, it's more than are playing R&B hip hop. But when it comes to what are people actually paying for, it's different. Okay. And what people are actually streaming, it's different. Now, when you look at, now we're just looking at albums. Okay. As we've seen with some other industries, it depends on, when you say who's number one, it depends on how you define number one. Right? With magazines, there's a difference between print and then print versus digital. It's similar with the music industry a little bit. When you include all forms of consumption, streaming, as well as people listening to things, on YouTube or TikTok, as well as purchasing an album, when you look at all the numbers, Taylor Swift is that album, Tortured Poets Department, was quite 4.6 million. That's big. And Morgan Wallen at 1.776 million. But when you look just at sales, when you exclude the other streaming numbers that are factored in, now we have Billie Eilish as number two. Okay, Taylor's still number one. I think maybe a lot of people in the class love Taylor Swift. I don't get her, but I'm not the audience, so I don't count that against her. I'm just not the audience. Okay. I don't know if I like Morgan Wallen or Billie Eilish, whatever. But anyway, I'm definitely not a Taylor Swift fan. Maybe more Beyonce. Anyway, I thought that you'd find that interesting. Okay, now I'm going to play a chunk, a good chunk of this particular podcast. It's from On the Media, a guy who wrote a book about algorithms, which is the way Spotify serves up music. And I assume y'all know that. And I'm not so fascinated by each and every little thing that the guy says, but I want you, as educated people, as educated college students, to start to think critically about the way algorithms work and the gatekeeping mechanism, that they're not this pure objective tool that is handed down from on high, that it's humans have made them, and humans have biases and their own prejudice, And some of that can become embedded and baked into the algorithm. So I want you to think critically about algorithms and the gatekeeping that's going on. But before I play that, I just want to explain one thing, a term that's going to show up towards the end of the excerpt, payola. And if you're not familiar with payola, now you will be. Payola is a term, it's illegal. It's considered an illegal practice when a music publisher or a song promoter gives money to a radio DJ to play that song on the air, a way of artificially manufacturing a hit. This has gone on since the beginning of the music industry and the beginning of radio. But in the 1960s, Congress, US Congress, actually got so concerned they had congressional hearings on it. And this DJ, Alan Freed is also associated with helping make the term rock and roll popular. Alan Freed actually was in trouble for taking payola. So it's not something that you should do. It's not a best practice. It's actually illegal. Has the problem been totally eliminated? Has it been totally eliminated? I don't think so. I think that the payola happens in more subtle ways. For example, if 91X, I like that station 91X, if 91X wants to do a concert like the big 91X Taco Festival or whatever, and they want some band to play, I'm not even going to name a band because I'll sound corny and old, but if they want a band to come play at the festival, maybe the music label will say, hey, we'll have this band come play for free. Do you think that makes 91X more inclined to play that band's music? Of course it does. Of course it does. So I think that payola still exists in some form, but maybe not as blatant as it used to. In the podcast you're going to hear the people bantering saying that, we shouldn't think that algorithms and the use of AI and Spotify are evil. We shouldn't, valorize and be overly nostalgic for the past, because there were things in the past that weren't fair either, including payola.
This is On the Media. I'm Brooke Gladstone.
And I'm Michael Lowinger. Before I landed a job at this show, I worked for a few years on and off at a couple record stores around New York City. And some of my favorite albums to this day were recommended to me by my coworkers. Men and women who I consider to be archivists, not just of old formats like vinyl records, cassettes, and CDs, but of underappreciated artists and niche genres. A knowledge of music history that can only come from a lifetime of obsessive listening, research, and curation. Nowadays, I pay for Spotify. I try to learn about music off the app and then save it for later listening on Spotify. But sometimes I find myself just letting its recommendation algorithm queue up the next track and the next. And it definitely works. Spotify has helped me discover great music, but it's never been as revelatory as a personal recommendation from a friend or an expert at a record store or an independent radio station. This feeling that I've traded convenience for something deeper is what made me want to read Filter World: How Algorithms Flattened Culture by Kyle Chayka, a staff writer at The New Yorker. Chayka says apps like Spotify and TikTok are great at studying user behavior, but that we should be suspicious of the idea that they can really know your taste.
You are not aware of every time you click into a Spotify track. You're not aware of when you favorite an album. On TikTok, you're absolutely not aware of every microsecond that you flip up a video or what you pay attention to a tiny bit longer than something else. So it doesn't know exactly what you're doing. And it doesn't forget that one time that you lingered too long on a shower tiling video. And it's you remember those shower tiling videos? Let me give you some more.
It would be good to define our terms a little bit. I know Spotify's algorithm is a trade secret. We don't know exactly how it works. But as you write in your book, there are clues based on literature about the development of recommendation algorithms that might tell us how it likely works.
Most recommendation algorithms are black boxes because the company itself does not want you to know how it works, because you might game it and that would ruin their product. But a lot of them work along the same lines, essentially measuring a bunch of variables about the content that's on their platform. How many times people have clicked it, what the faves are, what the retweets are, what the time watched is. And then using that to figure out what to promote more and what to kind of push off to one side or another.
Spotify doesn't know what's good or bad.
Right? That's a fundamental thing. Algorithmic recommendation is not about quality. There is no essential metric of quality. There is only attention. It can do thumbs up, thumbs down, but it can't be like, oh, Bach is better than Mozart.
Spotify's recommendation algorithm is just one part of what you call filter world. It's the name of your book, but it's also a concept. Can you describe it?
Yeah, filter world for me was this single term to describe the entire ecosystem of algorithmic feeds that we exist in. So when we're on the internet today, we are moving across all of these different platforms, whether Facebook or TikTok or Instagram, that are all driven by algorithmic recommendations that are constantly trying to guess what we might like and put the next piece of content in front of us based on what we've consumed before. I mean, I personally felt totally enclosed by this kind of sphere almost of algorithms, and I couldn't find something or listen to something without facing that surveillance and recommendation of what I was doing.
I want to dig into some examples of this feeling of being boxed in by algorithms at the same time as feeling that they provide us with the things that will fill our time and our hearts, TV shows, movies, albums. Let's talk about Netflix, for instance. When I open up the app on my TV or laptop, it feels like I'm being given a wide range of shows and movies tailored to me. But what's really happening there?
The homepage is supposed to be a thing that reflects your taste and filters through things that you're going to like. But more often, these categories are so broad and the kind of labels are so vague that they don't actually promise personalization. There's like a top 10 or there's a popular right now. And those shows are just what's convenient for Netflix to promote at a given time, what's popular with a certain segment of the users, and what they can most conveniently convince you to watch in a way. Like Netflix has this algorithmic system to change the thumbnail of a show.
Yeah, this is so creepy.
When you go on Netflix, the images of every TV show and movie are tailored to your preferences.
So, for instance, in 2018, there was like a controversy where a bunch of people were being promoted the film Love Actually, a pretty safe film to promote to a lot of people, very popular. Mm-hmm. But it turns out some people were being recommended with the prominent imagery of the black actor Chiwetel Ejiofor, who plays only a minor part in the film.
It's so manipulative if I, the Netflix algorithm, know that you watch a lot of movies with black actors, then I am going to present every movie as if it focuses on black actors. So in the case of Love Actually, which absolutely does not focus on black actors, I will highlight one of the few scenes that has this man in it in an effort to get you to watch it. Not because you definitely like Love Actually, not because you're going to love Hugh Grant dancing through the halls of the government or whatever, but because it would be convenient for Netflix if you watched this movie.
That's an egregious example of the bait and switch. I guess I want to talk about another theme in your book. You're talking about something slightly more pernicious, which is a recommendation algorithm like Spotify's that in maybe the largest library of legal music ever created, I am subtly encouraged to listen to the same stuff that I like over and over. How is that happening?
There are a lot of knobs and variables that can change in these formulas, but for Spotify, if you put on an album and then let it go, usually within a few songs, I think it serves you up something that you listen to constantly, that it knows you are not going to turn off in order to lull you into that hypnotic state of just listening to the infinite playlist and not thinking about it.
And this gets into what you want out of a listening experience or what you want out of a library of culture. My own sort of leaps forward in music curiosity has come from listening to the radio. Big shock, I work for a public radio show and I really like radio, but I think of WFMU, the independent radio station in New Jersey, or WKCR, Columbia's radio station. I remember for the first time hearing the Indian music show and hearing a 30-minute raga, and then somebody explained why it was interesting at the end. And I had never encountered that kind of music before. There is something that you argue in your book that is lost when we take curation away from humans.
Yeah, human curation, and that idea of a DJ, a human person who has selected this raga. And even though it's 30 minutes, that person is like, you are going to like this. It's important. And that's such a different encounter with a piece of culture than what you get on Spotify or what you get in a YouTube recommendation. The job of human curators, like a DJ, like a museum curator, or a librarian, is to build meaning through juxtaposition and then guide the consumer into it in a way that helps them kind of broaden their own horizons, as you said, or like brings them to a new place of taste or thought. And we just don't get that from a machine.
That said, I'm sure listeners right now are like, but Discover Weekly has like delivered some great stuff to me, or I keep a close eye on some of the high profile Spotify playlists that are curated by humans. So this is not a pure either or, right?
The internet is not the same thing as algorithms. There are many digital platforms that are not algorithmic. There are also ways of using Spotify that are not guided by algorithms. We can't blame algorithms so much. Like, they fulfill a really important function in sorting information. But I think we can take back some of our agency.
In comparing past ways of consuming music, say, like through the radio, to what you call filter world, we do run the risk of being overly nostalgic. The tastemakers of old, the radio DJs, the record store clerks, the critics, they had their own blind spots and biases. DJs of top 40 radio stations were swayed by money, pressure from labels, whatever the public at large they thought would respond to. That's not exactly for the pure love of music, right?
The old algorithms were human gatekeepers who made decisions about what culture should be promoted and what shouldn't. Magazine editors, record label executives, the DJs who might be influenced by, payola. So I don't think that's like inherently good. I do think in the best examples, like an indie radio DJ who's not overseen by corporate overlords, that can create really beautiful moments of curation and the transmission of culture. But so can a YouTube recommendation. I've gotten really interesting stuff from a YouTube recommendation that I wouldn't have known a person who could give me, and I wouldn't have known to seek it out.
Give me an example of the algorithm serving.
Okay, I'm Ron here. I'm recording. What's your verdict of the lamb chops?
It's very good.
The best?
Very yummy. I don't know if it's the best, but it is up there with the best.
When was the last time you had such good chops?
That's what I don't remember.
That is the best.
Yeah, that's why I've said it's up there with the best.
I think it's the company.